I never thought a few words could rip apart a marriage, but now, as I sit in my car with my hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the empty road ahead, I realized that's exactly what happened. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't some dramatic betrayal. It wasn't even the worst thing she had ever said to me, but it was enough. Enough to push me past the point of no return. It all happened at a dinner party, one of those gatherings that Meredith loved to throw. She thrived in social settings, B asking in attention, always the star of the show. I, on the other hand, had learned to tolerate them. For her sake, I would sit back, let her enjoy the spotlight, and try not to count the hours until it was over. But that night was different. The wine had been flowing freely, laughter echoing through the room. The conversation had somehow veered into a discussion about relationships, about what makes a couple work. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard my name. Take Leonard, for example. Meredith said, her voice laced with amusement. I looked up, catching her smirking at me. I mean, he tries his best. Bless his heart. But we all know who really holds things together. The group chuckled and I forced a small smile. I'd heard little comments like this before. She had a way of making herself the center of every story, usually at my expense. But then she kept going. I mean, come on. She continued swirling her wine glass. Leonard's not exactly the most assertive man in the world, we all know that. But, hey, that's why I married him. Someone's got to wear the pants, right? Laughter, a few knowing nods. One of her friends, Beth, let out a little, "Oh, Meredith, stop." But it was the kind of protest that wasn't meant to be taken seriously. My stomach tightened. I didn't know what hurt more, the words themselves or the casual way she said them, like it was a fact, an inside joke I wasn't in on, like I wasn't sitting right there. Hearing it all, I glanced around the table. No one looked particularly surprised. That's when I realized this wasn't new. This was how she talked about me when I wasn't around. This was how she saw me. A weak man. Something inside me cracked. I didn't say a word. I simply pushed my chair back and stood up. The laughter died down as everyone turned to look at me. "Where are you going?" Meredith asked, still grinning, still playing to the crowd. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman. I had spent years of my life with the woman I had built a life with, and in that moment I saw her differently. "I'm done," I said quietly. She frowned, the smile finally faltering. "Oh, come on, Leonard. Don't be so dramatic." But I wasn't being dramatic. I was just done. I turned and walked out. No yelling, no grand confrontation. Just silence. And now here I am sitting in my car thinking. Because the truth is, it wasn't just the joke, it was everything that led up to it. Years of little jabs, years of being the punchline in my own marriage, years of her making me feel like less, and I finally realized I didn't have to stay. I take a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, I feel something unexpected. Relief. But as I pull away from the house that no longer feels like home, I can't help but wonder, what happened happens now. The further I drove, the lighter I felt. It was an odd sensation, like shedding a weight I didn't even know I had been carrying for years. The streetlights blurred past me, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't rushing home to anything. No expectations, no role to play, no Meredith waiting with another story to tell at my expense. But then reality set in. I had nowhere to go. I could have driven to a friend's house, but the truth was I didn't have many close ones anymore. Over the years, Meredith had subtly made sure that most of my friendships faded. Not in an obvious controlling way, she wasn't that blatant, but through little discouragements, rolling her eyes when I made plans, acting put out when I came home late from seeing someone, making comments about how a married man doesn't have time to goof off. So, little by little, I stopped going out, stopped calling people, stopped making an effort. And now, when I needed someone, I had no one. I pulled into a motel parking lot, the neon vacancy sign buzzing like a mocking whisper. "This is where you are now," I muttered to myself. I checked in, paid in cash, and let myself into a tiny room that smelled like old carpet and cheap cleaning spray. It was barely past 11, but I felt exhausted. I dropped onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, and let the silence settle over me. And that's when my phone started buzzing. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Meredith. Call after call, then a stream of texts. "Where did you go, Leonard? Come home. Stop being ridiculous. This isn't funny. I swear if you don't answer me." I turned my phone over, letting the screen go dark. I knew her well enough to know that right now she wasn't scared or worried about me. She was embarrassed, angry, not because she had hurt me, but because I had walked out in front of people I had made her look bad. She never could handle losing control. The thought should have made me feel guilty, but it didn't. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. And that terrified me. Because what now? Leaving was one thing. Staying gone was another. I thought about going back, not because I wanted to, but because it was easier. Because it was what I knew. Because it was what was expected. But then I remembered the way she laughed at me, the way she made everyone laugh at me, the way she looked at me, not as a husband, not as a partner, but as something lesser. And I knew I couldn't go back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was headed. But for the first time in a long, long time, I was going to figure it out. I put my phone on silent, turned off the light, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would start again for me. I woke up to the pale glow of the motel alarm clock flashing AM. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The unfamiliar stiffness of the mattress, the faint smell of stale air. It was disorienting, but then it all came rushing back. I had left. I sat up, slowly rubbing my hands over my face. The weight of last night settled over me like an old coat. I checked my phone. 11 missed calls, countless texts from Meredith. Most of them were angry, then pleading, then angry again. "You can't just leave like this. Leonard, you're making a scene. Come home. We need to talk." Fine. If you're going to act like a child, then so be it. She had always been good at that, twisting things to make it seem like I was the problem, like my feelings weren't valid, like walking away from her. Constant belittling was some grand overreaction. But this time I wasn't buying it. Still, I knew I couldn't hide in a motel forever. I needed a plan. I got up, showered, and dressed in the same clothes from last night. My car was still parked outside, covered in morning dew. As I got in, I hesitated for a second. Where was I supposed to go? Then a thought hit me. There was someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, someone I hadn't allowed myself to reach out to because deep down I knew Meredith wouldn't have approved, my sister. Joyce. We had been close once, back before. I met Meredith back when I was still me. But over the years, things had shifted. Meredith never forbade me from seeing her, but she always had something to say whenever I brought her up. "She's just so negative, Leonard. She loves to stir up drama. I don't know why you let her make you feel guilty about your life. She never liked me. You know that, right?" Little things, small seeds of doubt, and eventually I started to pull away. I wasn't proud of it, but if there was anyone who would understand what I was going through right now, it was Joyce. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. It rang twice before she picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, unsure. I couldn't blame her. It had been too long. "Hey, Joyce. It's me." Silence. Then a slow exhale. "Leonard? Wow, I didn't think I'd hear from you again." "Yeah, I know I messed up." "No kidding." There was no malice in her voice, just an undeniable truth. "Listen, I don't expect you to drop everything, but I could really use someone to talk to." A pause, then, softer this time. "Where are you?" I told her, and just like that, I had a destination. As I drove toward her house, I couldn't help but wonder, had I waited too long to rebuild what I had lost? Because Meredith had taken a lot for me over the years, but I had let her. And now, it was time to take my life back. Joyce lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city, far enough from the chaos but not completely disconnected. As I pulled up to her house, I hesitated for a second. What if she didn't really want to see me? What if she was only being polite over the phone? After all, I had let years pass without making an effort. But before I could second-guess myself, the front door opened. Joyce stood there, arms crossed, watching me from the porch. She hadn't changed much, still had that sharp, knowing look in her eyes, like she could see right through here, any excuse I might try to give. I stepped out of the car, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "Hey," I said, forcing a weak smile. She just shook her head. "Leonard, you look like hell." I let out a dry chuckle. Feel like it too. Without another word, she stepped aside and gestured for me to come in. The house smelled like coffee and something sweet, cinnamon. Maybe it felt warm, inviting, a stark contrast to the Sea Museum, like a feel of my home with Meredith, where everything was polished to perfection but never truly comfortable. We sat in the living room and she handed me a cup of coffee before settling into the chair across from me. So she said, leaning forward, "Tell me what happened." I took a deep breath. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. Last night was just the final straw. And so I told her about the dinner party, about the joke, about how I had spent years ignoring the little jabs, the way Meredith treated me like I was something to be tolerated instead of valued, about how I had let it happen. Joyce listened without interrupting, nodding. Occasionally her expression unreadable. When I finished, she sat back with a sigh. "You finally saw it," she murmured. I frowned. "Saw what?" She studied me for a moment before shaking her head. "Leonard, you know what you've known for a long time. You just didn't want to admit it." I felt my stomach tighten. "Admit what?" "That Meredith never respected you," she said bluntly. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat, because deep down I knew she was right. Joyce leaned forward again, her gaze piercing. "You think this is new? The way she talks about you? The way she treats you, Leonard? I've seen it. Hell, everyone has. We all knew. We just didn't know if you'd ever wake up and realize it." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. "You're saying this was obvious?" I asked, my voice quieter. "Now?" Joyce gave me a sad smile. "Leonard, you're a good guy, a kind guy, and she knew that. She knew you'd put up with it, that you'd make excuses for her, that you'd rather be miserable than risk rocking the boat. But last night, that was the first time you actually stood up and left. And that's why she's panicking." Panic. The word stuck with me. Was that what Meredith was feeling right now? Panic. Not because she missed me, not because she regretted what she said, but because she realized she had finally pushed me too far. I swallowed hard. So what do I do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Joyce sighed, tapping her fingers against her mug. That depends, Leonard. Do you want your life back, or do you want to go back to being a joke in your own marriage? Her words stung, but maybe for the first time in a long time, I needed to feel that sting. Because she was right. I had a choice, and this time I wasn't going to make the wrong one. I sat there in silence, staring into my coffee, like it might give me the answers I was looking for. Joyce's words echoed in my head. Do you want your life back, or do you want to go back to being a joke in your own marriage? I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over my face. I don't even know who I am outside of that marriage anymore. Joyce's expression softened, but there was still that sharp edge to her voice. Then it's time to figure it out. Easier said than done. I had spent so many years shaping myself around Meredith, what she wanted, how she saw me, the role I played in her life. And now, standing outside of it, I realized how much of me had been lost in the process. But one thing was clear. I couldn't go back. And that's when my phone started buzzing again. I didn't even have to check to know it was Meredith. I sighed and finally picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. Answer it, Joyce said. Suddenly I looked at her, confused. Why? Because you need to hear how she talks to you when she knows you're slipping out of her control. That hit a nerve, but she was right. I needed to face this. I pressed accept and held the phone to my ear. Leonard Meredith's voice came through, sharp and clipped. So this is what we're doing now, running away like a child instead of talking like adults. I clenched my jaw. I left because you humiliated me in front of all our friends. Meredith. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It was a joke. You know how I am. You're really going to throw away our marriage over a joke there. It was the minimizing, the twisting, making it seem like I was the irrational one. I'm not throwing anything away, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You did that when you decided to make me the punchline of our marriage. She scoffed. Oh, please. Everyone at that table knew I was kidding. You think they actually took it seriously? That's the problem, Meredith, I snapped. They did take it seriously because they've heard it before. This wasn't new to them. It was new to me, realizing that this is how you actually see me. Silence for the first time. She didn't have an immediate comeback. Where are you? She finally asked, her voice softer, now almost pleading. That doesn't matter. Of course it does, Leonard. You're my husband. You can't just disappear like this. There was a shift in her tone. Now it wasn't anger anymore. It was fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. And I realized something in that moment. She wasn't calling to apologize. She wasn't calling because she wanted to fix things. She was calling because, for the first time in our marriage, I had taken a step outside of the life she had built for me, and that terrified her. I took a deep breath. I think we need time apart, Meredith. A sharp inhale. You can't be serious. I am, Leonard. Be reasonable. You're upset. I get that, but you're overreacting. Come home and we'll talk about this. Like adults. Like adults. That was rich, coming from someone who had spent our entire marriage treating me like an inconvenience. I glanced at Joyce. She was watching me closely, waiting to see what I would say. I turned back to the phone. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm not coming home. Not until I figure out if I even want to. Meredith let out a bitter laugh. Oh, so now you're making threats. I'm not threatening you, Meredith. I'm just done being treated like an afterthought. She was silent for a long moment. Then, when she finally spoke, her voice was cold. Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't expect me to sit around waiting for you to come to your senses. The call ended. I stared at my phone for a second, then placed it face down on the table. Joyce leaned back in her chair, smirking. Well, that was something I let out of breath. I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah. You okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I nodded for the first time in a long time. I think I am. I sat there for a long time staring at the phone in my hands. Meredith had always been good at controlling conversations and making me feel like I was the one who needed to apologize. But this time was different. This time she had lost control, and she hated that. Joyce sipped her coffee, watching me. You know what's coming next, right? I frowned. What do you mean? She set her mug down and leaned forward. She's not done, Leonard. Right now she's just recalculating. Check. Try another angle soon. Maybe guilt, maybe anger, maybe even pretending nothing happened. But she's not going to let you go that easily. I swallowed hard because I knew she was right. Meredith wasn't the type to just accept things. She had spent years shaping our marriage into something that worked for her. And now that I had stepped out of that mold, she was going to do whatever it took to pull me back in. I just didn't know how far she'd go. An unexpected message. The rest of the morning was quiet. Joyce. Let me use her guest room to shower and change into some old clothes she still had from when I used to visit. It felt strange, wearing something that wasn't picked out by Meredith. I checked my phone again. No new calls, no texts. That should have reassured me, but instead it put me on edge. Meredith never backed down this easily. And then, just as I was finishing my coffee, my phone buzzed a message. Not from Meredith, from Ryan. Ryan had been my best friend for years before Meredith, before everything. But like most of my friendships, my relationship with him had faded over time. Meredith had never liked him. She thought he was immature, reckless, a bad influence. And after years of her dismissing him, I had started to do the same. So why was he texting me now, Ryan? Hey man, heard about what happened. You okay? My heart dropped. Heard about what happened. How I quickly typed back, me. What do you mean? His response came almost immediately. Ryan, Meredith's been talking a lot, hot, posting stuff online, saying you had a breakdown and ran off. Some weird stuff, man. I felt my blood turn cold. I switched apps and opened Facebook, and there it was, a post from Meredith. Public. Marriage isn't always easy. Sometimes the person you love goes through things you don't understand. I've always tried my best to support Leonard, even when he struggles with his emotions. If you see him, please remind him that running away from problems doesn't solve them. I just want my husband back. I clenched my jaw. She wasn't just spinning the narrative. She was making me look like I was unstable, like I was some fragile, unbalanced man who had snapped and left his poor, devoted wife behind. It wasn't just a lie. It was calculated. I gripped the phone tighter as I scrolled through the comments. People sympathizing with her, offering support, calling me selfish, saying I should be a man and go home to my wife. One comment hit me harder than the rest. Beth Mayer, you are so strong for handling this with grace. I hope Leonard realizes how lucky he is to have someone like you. Beth, one of the people who had laughed at me at that dinner party. I felt something inside me snap. I had spent years letting Meredith control the narrative, control how people saw me, but not this time. I stood up, my hand shaking. She's making me look like the bad guy. Joyce took the phone from me, read the post, and let out a low whistle. Wow, she didn't waste any time, huh? I ran a hand through my hair, pacing. I can't believe this. She's turning me into the problem, making it seem like I just lost my mind and ran away. Joyce set the phone down and looked at me. "What are you going to do about it?" I stopped pacing. I hadn't thought that far ahead for so long. My instinct had always been to fix things, to go along with whatever made life easier to avoid conflict. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about the truth. I had a choice. I could let her rewrite the story, or I could take control of my own. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and started typing. It was time for the world to hear my side of the story. My fingers hovered over the screen as I tried to find the right words. How do you condense years of being belittled, dismissed, and manipulated into one post? How do you fight back when the world already sees you as the villain? But then I realized something: I didn't need to prove myself to strangers on the internet. I wasn't going to play Meredith's game. She wanted drama. She wanted a public spectacle. I wasn't giving her one. Instead, I sent a single message to Ryan. "Me, can we meet?" He responded almost immediately. "Ryan, hell yeah, man. Thought you'd never ask an old friend." A new perspective. An hour later, I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place Ryan and I used to go to before Meredith, back when life was simple. He was already there, sitting in a booth with 2 coffees, one black one with cream and sugar. "Exactly how I used to take it, man," he said. As I slid into the seat across from him, I got to say I did not expect to hear from you. I sighed. "Yeah, me neither." He studied me for a second, then shook his head. "You look different." I let out a dry laugh. "I feel different." We sat in silence for a moment before he leaned in. "So you finally see it." "Huh? See what?" He gave me a knowing look that, "She's been running your life from day one." I clenched my jaw. "I let her." Ryan shook his head. "And man, that's what she wants you to think. She made sure you thought it was your choice. That's how people like her work." His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I looked down at my coffee. "She's already spinning the story, telling everyone I had some kind of breakdown." Ryan scoffed. "Yeah, I saw. Classic move. She's playing the victim so no one questions her role in any of this." He took a sip of his coffee, then smirked. "So, what are you going to do about it?" That was the question, wasn't it? For so long, my instinct had been to retreat, to smooth things over, to let Meredith win, because it was easier than fighting back. But I wasn't that man anymore. "I'm not going back," I said firmly, "and I'm not letting her rewrite what happened." Ryan grinned. "Now, that's what I like to hear." I took a deep breath, but I need to be smart about this. I'm not just walking away from a marriage. I'm walking away from her version of me, because that's what this was really about. Meredith had spent years shaping how people saw me. The quiet husband, the pushover, the one who was lucky to have her. And now she was scrambling to keep that version of me alive, because the moment people saw the truth, she lost her power. Ryan nodded. "All right, so what's the plan?" I looked him in the eye. "I'm going to show people who I really am. The first step to freedom." After leaving the diner, I drove back to Joyce's place. My head was clearer now, for the first time in years. I wasn't acting out of fear, I was acting out of choice. I sat down, took out my phone, and wrote a message to Meredith. Not an apology, not an argument. Just the truth. Me. "I see what you're doing. I won't play your game anymore. I'm done." It was simple. It was final. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. I turned off my phone, leaned back and exhaled. I had no idea what came next, but whatever it was, it would be on my terms. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. No tension in my shoulders, no sinking feeling in my stomach. Just rest. When I woke up, the sun was shining through the blinds, and for a brief moment I forgot about everything that had happened. But then, as the memories of the past few days settled in, I felt something unexpected relief. I had finally done it. I had walked away from something that was never meant to hold me together. I got up, stretched, and found Joyce in the kitchen sipping her coffee. She raised an eyebrow as I sat across from her. "Well?" she asked. I smiled. A real one. "This time I think I'm going to be okay." She smirked. "Took you long enough." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Yeah, I guess it did." I checked my phone. No new messages from Meredith. It was the first time she hadn't tried to regain control. Maybe she finally understood, or maybe she was just planning her next move. Either way, it didn't matter because I was done being a piece in her game, a future without fear. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, including Ryan. I found a small apartment in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I started doing things I had given up over the years. Reading, running, even picking up a guitar again. I had spent so much time trying to be the man Meredith wanted me to be that I had forgotten who I actually was. But now I was finally remembering. Meredith tried reaching out a few times. At first it was cold and demanding. Then it turned into guilt-tripping, and finally she tried playing nice. I didn't respond, because I had already given her enough of my life. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I was just free. One last thought. One evening I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance. For so long I had convinced myself that leaving meant losing something, that walking away would make me incomplete. But now I realized the truth. I hadn't lost anything. I had gained myself back, and that was everything.